go to work, people shoot at me. Ray goes to work, people do the wave. When I met Ray, you know, I have to tell you, and I spent years on the road in stand-up. I never ran into him, so I didn't know who he was. You know, so I slipped him a 10 and I said, I'm gonna need a new robe.
Brad Garrett was the first person cast.
Right.
I remember being in New York when the casting was going on, and I remember Stu Smiley calling me and telling me, you know Brad Garrett, you know the comedian Brad Garrett, and I knew of him from Star Search and everything. He was a champion. He came in, he had a real funny reading, you know, and I pictured Brad, I was like, no way.
I remember reading this pilot called Everybody Loves Raymond, and I went, who wrote this? It's a dog and pony show. No, I looked at my pimp at the time, and I said, pull over. And I said, I think this really is very, very unique writing. And it was the first pilot season that I was getting just a little heat. I just finished a Seinfeld episode where I was really getting some recognition, and I was getting really, for the first time ever, some great stuff sent to me. And there were projects with a lot of big name people in it. And this other project came with this guy named Ray Romano, you know, who, the name, I thought it was, you know, the loofah boy at the Melrose Baths. Who knew Ray?
Do we have to bring your brother over?
Well, my brother lives with them. He doesn't like staying alone.
He's 40, Ray.
Well, you know, I read it, and I believe what they were looking for originally, wasn't like, get me a 7-foot Jew. I don't think it started like that. Can you say that on DVD?
We pictured a shorter guy because I think Ray's older brother is a little shorter than him, and it just seemed funny to me that, oh, his older brother, shorter, literally looks up to Raymond. Then, you know, this mountain walks into the office, and you think right away, well, that's another way to go, you know, and then he opens his mouth, and we fell over laughing.
He's just an imposing physical figure, and next to Ray, just the picture alone seemed to be funny. But he came in, gave a great reading, and I'm not sure who was his champion, but there wasn't a lot of discussion about Brad. It was a pretty unanimous feeling that Brad was the guy to play Robert.
You think I'm wasting my life?
Well, it's different with you, dear.
Casting Doris was probably one of the more difficult parts of the pilot.
Hi, Mom.
Hi. I saw your car pull up before. You didn't call.
No.
Well, actually, before I started the show, I was directing a play that had 23 people in it, music, way in over my head.
Doris was on my original list, and you want that person who knows exactly who Marie Barone is. And a very small handful of people walked in the door armed with that knowledge.
Over 100 women had auditioned for this part prior to me. What took them so long, I don't know.
I went out to the waiting room and I called her name. And as I brought her in the room, she stopped me. She grabbed my wrist at the door and she whispered to me, she said, I'm telling you, if I don't get this role, I'm tearing up my SAG card. And first of all, the pressure of that was terrifying to me at the time, to be told by this fabulous actress who has worked forever in this business. I mean, she knew she was right for this.
When I approach this part, I approach it from a completely dramatic level. I don't think of it as funny. I do my character as I see her. She gets in your hair, she tells you what to do with your life, she does all those terrible things, as all mothers do. But I find that I walk a very thin line, and you can laugh at me.
Deborah, I brought you some baking soda for your fridge. I smelled something questionable.
From across the street?
No, when I was here yesterday.
When you finally hear the words said the way they're meant to be said, getting every single joke, and finding jokes that you never knew existed, that part's really exciting.
Nobody came close to Doris Roberts. She just knocked it out of the park.
Yeah.
She read with that Fruit of the Month scene and just was the character. Just was exactly. Nobody ever had a second's thought about not using her. I mean, it was clear. It's nice when that happens because there's no doubt.
Peter, it was a tougher, I mean, that was more of a, not a stretch, but I think Peter Boyle was an idea that I came up with, actually. I said, let's go a little bit more off-center, somebody who you wouldn't think of. And frankly, we were pleasantly surprised that an actor of Peter Boyle's caliber would want to do a sitcom.
Let me just smell their heads once more.
Dad, please, please, Dad.
It's the fountain of youth. I'm sucking in that youth.
Dad, I'm begging you.
I got a call to come for a meeting at actually at Universal Studios for this pilot. So I decided I'd take my wife and daughters.
We were working in this very odd, remote office, and at Universal it was very hard to find, and Peter didn't have a pass, and he got lost.
All the while, my wife is saying to me, "Do you know where you're going?" Well, when you don't know where you're going, and your wife is saying, "Do you know where you're going?" it makes you snappy.
By the time he reached Ray and Phil, he like boomed in the door, with the steam coming out of his ears.
I was a little edgy. And I confess, and it's hard to admit this in front of millions of people who are watching this DVD, but I have a temper. I attribute it to my racial heritage. I am an Irish person of Irish descent, and I have a temper, and I snapped a little bit.
He scared us both, and we said, okay, you have the part. We weren't going to argue with him.
I didn't think it was a major snap, but basically, that's how I got the job.
All right, I'm going to ask you quickly and quietly move to your nearest exit.
It's the fourth quarter.
Dad, please, buckle up and go.
When somebody does you a favor, you're supposed to say thank you.
Thank you, Mom and Dad. You're wonderful grandparents. You're not evil at all.
Ray was a stand-up comedian. It was real important that we have an actress with him, somebody who had a great deal of acting experience that would make Ray better, that he had somebody to bounce off of.
It's not just the wife. You don't want to just have the wife, the kind of, oh, hi, dear, let me get your dinner. We want her to be a three-dimensional character. We want her to have a personality. We want her to, be this character who's my wife and Ray's wife, who gives us trouble sometimes and we have to answer to.
Maybe you need a break. I'll tell you, why don't you go out with Linda tomorrow night?
Want to leave the kids with your parents?
No, I'll do the kids. Oh.
It was pilot season, and I hadn't gotten anything. My husband and I had 2 children at the time, and I distinctly remember sitting out on our back steps clipping coupons to save, 99 cents on 2 packs of ballpark franks.
Her agency had called, and I returned the call, and the agent said, "What about Patricia Heaton?" And in my head, I thought, fantastic, that V8 moment. Why didn't I think of that?
I got this call to go in and read for Everybody Loves Raymond, and had never heard of Ray, never heard of Phil Rosenthal. I'm just feeling hassled and pressured because I got the kids at home and the sitter wants to leave, and I walk into the waiting room and there's 12 women in front of me. And I just thought, ugh.
I think we saw 200 women for this role. I was flying back and forth, New York, here, having casting sessions, and this is actually the hardest role in the world to cast.
And it was about a week before we were supposed to start filming.
Yes.
I said to all these lovely women, I said, do you mind if I go in first? I'll be really fast, but I have the sitter, I gotta go. And they were all so lovely, and they said, yeah, sure, of course, go in.
Patty walked in the door already a wife and mom. She was very much at ease. I didn't feel like there was an actress there eager for her next job. She was really sort of like, listen, I gotta go get my kids. And there was something about that really matched Deborah.
I went into the room and sat down, and there were all these people in the room who I'd never seen before, and they were so gracious and so lovely. And they said, and of course, this is Ray Romano. And I looked over, and look, we all now know that Ray is a genius and extremely sexually attractive. At that time, it didn't really jump out at me. And so when I looked at him, I just thought, oh, well, better get some more coupons because I'm going to need them.
That was one of those, she just comes in and meets, she doesn't have to read with us, right?
But she did.
But she did read, I know.
And she even kissed you.
Yes.
Which, for Ray, that was like, we have a winner.
Cookies?
I could have come in and sounded like Marlon Brando, but as long as I kissed him, I would be okay. I would get the job, because apparently nobody else would kiss Ray.
No, just wait a second. The scene we were doing called for a kiss.
Yes.
Each actress, interprets that differently. And most of them they sat on my lap for some kiss and would kiss me on the cheek, and she was the first one to kiss me on the lips. And I said,
This girl's easy.
hired.
She seems easy, let's go.
What are you doing here?
What are you doing here?
We live here.
We thought you were in Bear Mountain.
Bear Mountain? Who told you that?
Raymond!